Now, just try to use your imagination with me this morning, all right? If you need to close your eyes but don't go to sleep, go ahead. But if you can't close your eyes while going to sleep, don't close your eyes. But just kind of picture with me, it's early on a Sunday morning, and it's so early that there's no light out. The sun has not come up, and here's this woman wandering through a graveyard. What's a woman doing in a graveyard before sunrise? And she shows up because she knows where the tomb of Jesus is. She shows up and she sees that it's empty. And her first response is, I need to go get the apostles. So she runs off, she gets them, they come, and they take a look, and they see, yep, boy, that's an empty tomb. That's an empty tomb. That's right, it's empty. And notice what they did. Where did they go? They went back home. But she stayed. This woman had the type of faith that is going to stay at the empty tomb. The disciples run off. She stays. And the next thing we see about her is that she is weeping. The text says weeping. The Greek says she was sobbing. Now I want you to picture this. Have you ever been to a graveyard? Have you ever been to a place where somebody you love has been laid? Have you ever lost somebody really close to you where when you think about their departure, you're sobbing, just can't control it because you hurt so deep because you miss that person? Anybody out there relate to that? Sure you can. That's the scene. This woman misses Jesus so much. She's just weeping, can't control herself. She's hurt so deeply. And now, after all that Jesus has gone through, he's been beaten, spat upon, hung on the cross, and now his body is missing. And what's going to happen now? What are they doing to his body? Could you imagine your loved one that you miss so much being taken out of the tomb and then disgraced in that way? That would hurt, wouldn't it? Sobbing deeply within her soul, just wanting to be with Jesus. In death or in life, she just wants to be close to Christ. I guess before we move on, what I want to know is a little bit more about this Mary. Hold your places in John and flip back to the book of Luke. Luke chapter 8. Let's get to know who she is, and maybe when we get to know who she is and figure out where she's come from, we can figure out why in the world she's standing crying by an empty tomb. And why she's the first one to see Jesus alive after being crucified. Luke chapter 8, starting in verse 1. And it came about soon afterwards that he, Jesus, began going about from city and village to another, proclaiming the preaching the kingdom of God. And the 12 were with him. And also some women who had been healed of evil spirits and sicknesses, Mary, who was called Magdalene, from whom 7 demons had gone out. So here we're introduced to this woman named Mary Magdalene. What do we know about her? Not much. We know that she is from the place or the city called Magdala. Magdala is a coastal town. They specialized in the dyes that go into clothing. We know that much about her. We don't know whether she was married. We don't know whether she had children. Don't know what her age was. Don't have a clue. There are some that say they know things about her, like she was the prostitute that cried on the feet of Jesus, and Jesus had his feet dried by her hair, but there isn't anything in the scriptures that say that. Nothing. That's a tradition being taught by a different religious organization. It is not what we see in history. We don't know. The only thing we really know about this woman is where she comes from and what she had. Demons. Do you believe in demons? Do you believe in demons? I'm not going to tell you, I'm no expert on demons nor demon possession. I'm not an expert at all in that field, but here's what I do know. I do know that demons are connected to the devil. I know that they are spiritual beasts, and they are. And I know at least in the first century, they were nasty, could infest and interject themselves into people and take control of their lives. We have several examples in the New Testament where we see people demon-possessed that would actually have their bodies thrown into fire. and they would go in there themselves. Not that they wanted to go, but the demon led them into the fire. We've got folks who are demon-possessed that would actually take sharp rocks and cut themselves until they bled. There were instances where they would be cast down and have convulsions where they had absolutely no control of their bodies whatsoever. We have instances where there were demons who made these people just absolutely crazed, naked, stinky, nasty, foaming at the mouth. Demon-possessed, taking control of people's lives. Mary Magdalene had 7 demons in her. Imagine how much control she had of herself. She had absolutely none. Now, before I go on, the question then comes up, well, is there demon possession today? And again, I'll say I'm no expert on this and in this field. But I do know this to be true. Satan still exists. And there are literally billions and billions and billions of people in this world, whether knowingly or unknowingly, being influenced and led by him. And there are some people who have allowed themselves to be led by him to such a point that they don't control really themselves anymore. Is that demon possession? You be the judge. But I know there are a whole bunch of folks, perhaps some in this room right now, who are being led and influenced by the dark side, and you are absolutely tired of it. That you want to be set free. That you're tired of the life that you have found. You're tired of the consequences of the decisions that you've made. You're tired of the place that you're at with the despair and hurt and anguish and lack of focus and lack of control. And you want it to stop, and your last resort is Jesus. It was for her. She had no way of coming clean on her own. And so somewhere along the line, she came in contact with Christ. And Jesus saw this poor woman hurt by the devil within. And he set her free. Could you imagine that? Being overwhelmed with such mental and physical anguish. And then in the moment's notice with the words of Christ, set free, cleaned up. Right mind, can control yourself, can go where you want to go, do what you want to do, and Jesus is the one that set you free. This woman was so ecstatic with what Christ has done, and only what Christ could do in her life, that she then dedicated her whole life to Christ. Who else would she follow?